Hello, beautiful homemakers. We are starting Pamphlet 7, Fascinating Womanhood, an analysis of the factors in the development of fascinating womanhood. Fascinating Womanhood, or the art of attracting men. A practical course of lessons in the underlying principles by which women attract men, leading to the proposal and culminating in marriage, in 8 parts. The Psychology Press, University City, St. Louis, 1922. There are 2 main chapters called Undermining the Man's Reserve and Arousing Worship, Adoration, and Love. Part 1, or Pamphlet 1, consisted of the 5 stages of winning a man and why men are hard to win. Part 2, the kind of woman a man wants and developing your latent power. Part 3, the real charm and how to acquire it and winning a man's admiration. Part 4, the quality that inspires love and revealing your real self. Part 5, the appearance that fascinates, where and how to meet men, peculiarities of human nature in men. Part 6, making men notice you and method of arousing interest. And now Part 7, Undermining the Man's Reserve and Arousing Worship, Adoration, and Love. Chapter 14, Undermining the Man's Reserve. A man may let down the bar of his reserve for a time, as described in the last chapter, Pamphlet 6. He may confide to you something of his intimate motives and aspirations, and that may be the end of the matter. His first confidence is not followed by others still more sacred. He does not go to the length of letting down the bars of his reserve, except in 1 or 2 comparatively unimportant matters. And, though this is a good beginning, your purpose will never be accomplished until he is willing and anxious to pour out his very soul before you, until the last vestige of his reserve has disappeared, until he will trust you absolutely and unequivocally with everything that he holds sacred. The next part is in caps. Meantime, there are 2 things you must do. The first is to keep him from backsliding, from retreating again into his shell of reserve. The second is to increase his assurance that he will always meet with sympathetic appreciation from you. How to do this can perhaps best be demonstrated by an example. Maintaining and increasing the suitor's interest. Let us go back and study the case of Johnny and Miss Innocent, described in Chapter 1, Pamphlet 1. After Johnny's first glimmer of interest was aroused by Innocent's appreciation of his ability to swim, and her intimation that swimming must be terribly difficult. Remember, this is 1922, when women couldn't swim. Many men couldn't either. And that the man who masters it is indeed a man. What would she do to maintain and intensify the interest? Johnny, of course, has let down the first bar of his reserve. He has shown her his secret pride in his skill at swimming. You may rest assured that he would not let her know how vain he was of this accomplishment if he did not realize that he would be appreciated for it instead of ridiculed. An unattractive girl at this juncture would think to herself, "What a vain little nonentity he really is!" Or she would indifferently hear his confession and switch the conversation to another subject. But when Johnny confesses his secret pride in this accomplishment, he expects the girl to appreciate that this is something he does not confess to everyone. Indifference, accordingly, is little less than an insult to him. If the girl makes the wrong step here, he will lose interest in her forever. What does Miss Innocent do? And remember, this would go for any accomplishment, not just swimming. The next subsection is Miss Innocent takes the right step. She is not particularly interested in swimming, but she is interested in Johnny's character. The minute she met him, she said to herself, "I'll bet he's a real man." She has been eagerly looking for something to back up her belief in him. Her very attitude indicates that she believes he is a masterly sort of fellow, that she is grateful to meet someone on whose masterful guidance she can depend. Her eyes show that she is interested in him, that she is sure her good opinion is well founded. She asks a few questions, sure that the answer will prove his manliness. She flatteringly intimates that she has assumed that he must be an athlete. Something about him, she can't tell what, makes her feel that way. Johnny, of course, is gratified at this good opinion of him, even though he disclaims all athletic pretensions. He can, however, swim a little. We have already described in Chapter 1 how she shows her great respect for this accomplishment, and refuses to believe that it is as simple as Johnny claims. In spite of his attempt to deprecate himself, she is now convinced that Johnny is the real man she thought he was. As explained in Chapter 1, Johnny then launches into a tiresome description of the different strokes that would bore the ordinary girl to death, and Johnny would never have launched it at the ordinary girl. The fact that he has done so with Miss Innocent shows that he already believes she is different from the ordinary girl, that he is already persuaded that she understands him better. As already explained, he has let down the first bar of his reserve, but the slightest sign of indifference here would immediately cause him to raise it up again. And if you keep in mind that he is trying to show you his mastery of the subject, of any subject, you can more easily admire him without trying to take in all the facts and technical jargon that he is going to go into depth about on any subject that he is particularly fond of or that he excels in. Now, watch her innocence. The tiresome monologue causes her mind to wander, as it would anyone else. But in her case, the mind wanders to the right things. She observes to herself that he is an enthusiastic, boyish, likable sort of fellow. She notices that he is eager to be understood for what he is, and she likes him for that eagerness. In his apparent mastery of his accomplishment, she thinks she sees patience and purpose and strength. Above all, she sees in him a strong and manly character. Of course, all these things have not been proved to her, but she becomes very anxious to have them proved. How she makes Johnny feel. Such remarks as these plainly indicate how she is appreciating Johnny. "I don't think I could ever get my feet and hands to work together like that. How can you ever get up the courage to take a high dive? I'd be afraid I'd never come up again. It must be a terrible feeling when you can't touch bottom. I could never stand to have my head under water," etc., etc. Every remark indicates how vastly different he is from Miss Innocent herself, and brings out the contrast between her timid fear of water and his manly mastery of it. Before Johnny's monologue is finished, he feels like a brave and courageous man among men, and he knows that Innocent feels the same way. Johnny hasn't felt so competent and manly in a month of Sundays. Incidentally, he is beginning to feel that Innocent herself is a timid and tender, but most womanly and girlish creature. He may even suspect that other people don't realize her frail womanliness, and that he had better keep a watch over her to prevent her timid feelings from getting abused. This feeling of protectiveness, of superiority, of power to guide and shelter, is a pleasurable sensation. It is intensified by Miss Innocent's seizing every opportunity to point out how different he, a man, is from her, a woman. How unlike today, when women just want to emulate men. When Johnny suggests that she ought to try swimming herself to see how simple it is, Miss Innocent is horrified at the idea of trusting herself to the water, and as for diving, she becomes panic-stricken at the mere mention of it. When the proposal is made that she go with Johnny to the natatorium, which was an indoor swimming pool, or the beach, she almost collapses with fright at the idea of her attempting to swim, but finally lets herself be coaxed into making the arrangement, making it plain that it is only because of her infinite faith and trust in his ability to take care of her. So you may be pooh-poohing at the idea of swimming, but what about skydiving, or river rafting, or some other horrible thing like that? Really, what you want to do is let the man know that you are nervous about whatever he's trying to get you to do, and that you'll only do whatever it is because you have infinite faith and trust in his ability to take care of you. For me, when I was dating my husband, it was rollerblading. My brother had coaxed me into going rollerblading for the first time, and then when I met my husband, he was also into rollerblading, and my brother had taken such good care of me on hills and helping me slow down that I was able to then trust this new man whom I was dating into taking care of me rollerblading at the beach and at the park. And there were several times when I really did need both my brother's help and my boyfriend's help in slowing down and navigating hills. In pooh-poohing her fears, Johnny again feels a pleasurable sensation of manly superiority. Upon reaching home that evening, Johnny cannot avoid recalling with pleasure his meeting with Miss Innocent. He thinks she is the most delightfully girlish creature he has ever met. The only reason, of course, for his thinking so is that she has made him feel bigger and stronger and braver and manlier than he ever felt in his life before. And this is in caps. Here is someone, he tells himself, who understands and appreciates him. He goes to rest in a glow of satisfaction and pride. Now remember, swimming is only an example. Your man will have some other thing which he does well, and you need to find it out. Now, before I met my husband, I met a man whose passion was whitewater river rafting. Now that would scare me to death. And so while I could praise him and his bravery and mastery over nature, I really quickly dismissed him as a potential suitor because I knew that he would want me to share his passion. He was looking for a wife to go camping and rafting with, and that would never be me. But let's say that was his passion, but he didn't need his wife to share that passion with him, that he would just do that with his buddies, and then she could, stay back at the cabin or something with the other women. I still don't think that would have been a good match for me, because then I'd have the worry, there'd be constant camping trips, and then he'd want to take children camping, and then I would worry about the children rafting. So it wasn't a good match for me, but let's say it was. I would have had the 3 dates with him to make sure that he was marriage-minded, and then on date 4, I would bring up his whitewater river rafting, and that's not something I would want to do, and I wouldn't want to be pressured into doing so. I would bring that up on date 4. At that point, he would say either, it's fine with me that you don't like to raft, or he would say, I'm really looking for a woman that's into this. Quickly thereafter, I met my soon-to-be husband, and he informed me that his passion was swimming in the ocean. So again, I could praise him for his swimming ability, something that I don't have. I'm not a strong swimmer. And I could play up his masculinity and my femininity. And I told him that I don't like swimming in the ocean. Number one, it's too cold for me. And number two, I had a really bad experience when I was 8 in the ocean. And I haven't cared for going swimming in the ocean since. And that I would never want to be pressured to do so. He responded that he would never pressure me. He had hopes that I would enjoy going to the beach. Before you have children, going to the beach was the thing to do around here. It's 20 minutes away. It's beautiful. There's a lot to do down there. A lot of shops and trails to walk. And we did that quite often before we had a child. But we haven't done too much beach going or swimming since then. But he said he would never pressure me because he too had had a bad experience swimming. He had been caught in a riptide, and a lifeguard had saved his life. So I knew I could trust his word that he would never pressure me to go swimming in the ocean. Let's continue. Why Johnny thinks Miss Innocent is different. During the week while he is waiting for his next meeting with Miss Innocent, Johnny meets many other girls. But these girls don't bring out the contrast between their tenderness and his strength, and they don't make him feel particularly manly. Some of them, indeed, by their businesslike way of going about things, their manner of being very well able to get along without him or any other man, make him feel as if he were no stronger and no more masterly than they are. It is a most humiliating sensation. Consequently, Johnny can't help feeling the vast difference between Miss Innocent and these other girls. The latter do not understand him. They may be pretty and even beautiful, but so far as he is concerned, they are uninteresting. 1 week later. Needless to say, the swimming lesson a week later gives Miss Innocent plenty of opportunity to contrast her timid girlishness with his brave manliness. Later, as they are dawdling over refreshments in a tea-room, Miss Innocent sets out to demolish further Johnny's barrier of reserve. She is convinced that Johnny is as masterly in other matters as he is in swimming, and she is anxious to have this proved. So she throws out a few gentle hints. She intimates that with his mastery over his muscles, he must be a wonderful dancer. She, of course, is hoping that with this opening he may invite her to a dance. But this time she is baffled, for Johnny cannot dance at all. Miss Innocent refuses to believe him. She knows he would make such a good dancer. He has all the essentials. This rather flattering opinion of him doesn't displease Johnny in the least. She finally and reluctantly consents to believe that he cannot dance, but insists that he would be an expert if only he tried. She now tries another tack. She tells him that he reminds her a great deal of the vice president of the company by which she is employed. Miss Innocent, by the way, is a stenographer. Johnny smiles and wants to know wherein the resemblance lies. Miss Innocent replies that both have the same air of authority about them. She hopes that this will lead him to tell something of his position in the business world, but this hope meets with disappointment. Though it is very agreeable for Johnny to hear that she is thus favorably impressed with him, he does not choose to disclose anything about his business, for the simple reason that he is not particularly proud of the position he holds, and is afraid to weaken himself in her good opinion. His reserve is again in the foreground. A serious obstacle arises. Miss Innocent sees that she has touched a subject upon which Johnny is sensitive, that his reserve is far from being entirely undermined, and she is very much disappointed. She is anxious to admire Johnny in the part of a businessman as well as in the role of a swimmer. She feels that his business life as well as his athletic life would be characterized by courage, daring, competence, skill, and masterful control. She even believes that Johnny doesn't appreciate himself in business as he ought to do, that he is blind to his own merits because of discouraging but unfair circumstances. She is persuaded that, if given a chance, he will play the part of a real man anywhere and everywhere. Anxious as she is to offer Johnny this appreciation and sympathy, she is naturally chagrined to discover his reserve standing in her way. And we will continue the rest of this story in the next video.